Uh, to use a cliche, needs no introduction, but then I need to introduce him. He's the chairman fintech of ITFA. I know him for more than a decade when he was head of supply chain for Swift. Then he has been one of the pioneers of all these initiatives. And today he's joined by two of his colleagues who are experts in their respective fields. And the best part is it's three continents. One sitting in the US, Mr. Andre is in Brussels, and our own Pratik is sitting in Hyderabad. So Andre, instead of wasting words, and like time is precious, I thank you for accepting our invitation. It's the last webinar of Trade Finance World Group, and thank you so much, Andre, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pinaki, for having us today, this evening for you in India. I'm based in Belgium, so it's midday for me, and we're welcoming many of you, including some of you from the US. It's a pleasure to be here with you for a year-end wrap-up session on two of the, I believe, most strategic trade finance initiatives that I'm happy to lead as part of my activities with some fintech companies and through market associations like ITFA and ICC. We're going to focus today on two of those initiatives indeed, the DNI Initiative and the TFD Initiative. And for this, I have invited two speakers representing core technology providers involved in those initiatives. And we want to share with you today how those initiatives are definitely focusing on technology, but to achieve ambitions that the industry has in terms of growing digitization and liquidity management in trade finance. So although we are technology players, we are definitely going to talk about legal changes in the market that are required to progress some of those innovations. So this session is being recorded, so you will be able to share it after the session, Pinaki, if you want. So today we have the pleasure of welcoming Bill Sebel, who is head of ecosystem at XinFin XDC Network. And you will hear from Billy how XDC Network is supporting the two initiatives we're going to talk about. We have the also pleasure to welcome Pratik Sharma, COO at Automaxis, who is an Indian trade documentation digitization platform. And on my side, as an independent consultant and chair of the FinTech committee for ITFA, I'm also involved in ICC activities regarding those two initiatives we're going to talk about. I will represent here two of my activities with Enigio and Tradeteq. So with this, let's start with the DNI initiative. And before talking about technology, I really want to talk about what is happening at the top of the iceberg, at the top of the food chain with regards to trade digitization. There were a lot of industry alignment, industry efforts, advocacy in the market this year, 2021. And the result of this is that the digitization of trade finance has really focused on the electronic transferable records. And we're going to talk about what we mean with electronic transferable records. But the most important is yesterday's announcement, which we had expected because we already saw many news from the G7 in Q2. But basically what is happening is that the G7 is now pushing for this topic. It has become a priority on the G7 agenda to promote the use of technologies without specifying which ones, but it has become a priority for the G7 to tell the national policymakers around the world to update their laws in order to enable the digitization of electronic records. And this is not coming out of the blue. This is the result of much industry work by legal experts who have developed over the last decade, actually, and released in 2017, the model law for electronic transferable records. So in this slide, I focus on how important this topic has become for the G7 countries. And basically, you see at the bottom of the slide the link to the full announcement that was published yesterday. As I said, this G7 announcement is the result of much work of various legal experts and universities. I know some of them in the UK. It's fascinating how technical this piece of work is, because basically what they have developed is a model law for electronic transferable records. So the reference text is available since 2017, and you have the link at the bottom of this slide for the full details. I think the big difference here and why this change of laws is so critical is that when you want to digitize some documents, you can do it according to very basic technologies. And we have seen recently, over the last decade, the emergence of electronic signature as quite an advanced piece of technology in order to add a personal signature on a particular piece of information. It could be a contract or a transaction or any kind of content. However, now with transferable records, we mean that what we're going to digitize is basically something that has value for the holder of the document or the instrument. And it's important to basically demonstrate through technology how the possession of the document or the instrument, it could be a bill of lading, it could be a bill of exchange, is actually under the exclusive control of one person. A bit like when you hold a piece of paper, like a banknote or a bill, a draft, it's yours because you hold it physically in your hands. How can we achieve that under the electronic, in the electronic world, has been the focus of those experts that have developed the model law for electronic transferable records. We call it MLETR, as you see in the text. So digitizing the exclusive ownership is key, the exclusive control of this electronic record, and digitizing also the transfer of possession, because we know that a bill of exchange, a prom note, a bill of lading are transferred along the supply chain, along the physical chain as well, physical and financial supply chains actually, as per the needs. So I have extracted here the main text that is important for technologists to realize what the technology has to be able to achieve. And it's not just electronic signature, because you can't demonstrate that exclusive control with electronic signature. You need more technologies, and this is what we're going to talk about today. But of course, for technology to deliver what it has to deliver, we need the laws to change, because the laws, like the English law for the Bill of Exchange Act, has to recognize the possession of intangible asset. And today in the UK, this is the big question: how to upgrade the Bill of Exchange Act to make it so it recognizes intangible asset, such as an electronic record. And the solution has been developed in the UK by the Law Commission for England and Wales, and we expect indeed that new legal text to be approved by Parliament next year. So G7, MLETR, what we have done then at the level of the technology side, as part of ITFA and the Dni Initiative, we have basically focused on this particular topic since 2 years, mid-2019, 2 years and a half actually now, and worked with different jurisdictions, in particular with Abu Dhabi and the DGM team in 2020, yes, and 2021, but also with the UK team, to basically understand indeed how the MLETR objective can be achieved. And basically, we have created a community of technology firms, some financial institutions and corporates committed to demonstrate how technology can achieve the MLETR objective. So at this stage, basically, we have identified how to achieve the MLETR ambition through the combination of existing trade finance technologies as well as new technologies, mainly document management and some blockchain technologies. As you see on the left-hand side of this slide, more and more countries are adopting the MLETR. Next year, we expect the UK, Egypt, as well as smaller countries to get there as well and align with the MLETR. So really complete the work, not just start the work, but other major countries like Germany, France are starting the work, and we expect results also next year, 2022. There is much collaboration around this initiative with indeed ICC, Abu Dhabi Global Market, the UK Law Commission, or the Law Commission for England and Wales, I should say, the G7 and the Dubai International Financial Center, because indeed those jurisdictions are very much interested in following the examples of Bahrain, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, and Paraguay, to name the four first ones. At the level of the DNI community, we have actually identified how to achieve the MLETR ambition. And this is basically through the use of a document technology that is not just electronic signature again, because with electronic signature, you can't demonstrate exclusive ownership of a digital document. So basically we combine, or what the Enigio technology offers is a way to manage a document which represents a bill of exchange, a bill of lading, or a warehouse receipt, a transferable electronic record. We combine that with cryptographic keys, private keys, to assign the ownership, the exclusive ownership to a particular person. And we use a public ledger to track the life cycle of the document. And that piece of technology is embedding electronic signature, but it achieves what MLETR wants, which is to demonstrate exclusive ownership and to enable digital transfer of ownership of any particular electronic transferable record, like those documents I have mentioned already. So we have a piece of technology, but of course it's very important to enable this technology to be embedded into other technologies, like the trade finance systems and platforms we use today. And this has been our major focus indeed over the last 2 years and a half when we started this DNI initiative. And we have assembled, we have established this community of highly specialized players. We have law firms, we have back office vendors, we have a blockchain company that Bill represents here today. We're going to talk about this. We have indeed trade digitization platforms like Mitigram, WeTrade, and some corporates that are starting to take notice of the opportunities. So that is the community that wants to deliver the end products to the corporates in the end. And you're welcome to consider indeed joining that community as well. Now, I would like to focus on the role of Automaxis, which is an Indian trade documentation platform. But I would like first to understand from Automaxis, from Prateek, what Automaxis is delivering today, and how you see this MLETR trend enabling you to grow your services in the future. So Prateek, can you tell us more today about Automaxis, and who are your customers and what are the documents you digitize today?
Sure. Thank you, Andre. For the issues that the cross-border trader face at the time of doing the international trade, we have built a platform that helps in streamlining the document transactions by integrating the different stakeholders that are involved in the supply chain. So the stakeholders that we majorly integrate, or we right now have, are the chambers of commerce present locally in India, the customs of India. So we have a dedicated website of the Indian government called IceGate. We're not directly integrating, but we have made some integration or some sort of connectivity wherein the data formats that the portal understands are actually developed by us. And we are providing a solution to the importers and exporters. So at a click of a button, they can get the document level transaction done and get the respective stakeholders connected. So we majorly have banks. We will be integrating the banks, but right now have the success story is for the chambers of commerce, and behind which we have close to 1,500 export houses doing the transactions.
Very good.
And to answer the documents that we are digitizing or we have right now being the transactions that are carried out, that includes, since I said about the chambers of commerce, which are involved in the business of issuing a certificate of origin. So they make use of our platform. So that's a standalone application that we have built for them, but that is something that speaks with the product that we have, an entire suite of offering for the exporters and importers. So the documents that we digitize is certificate of origin, a packing list, invoice, and other supporting documents that are needed in the cross-border supply chain.
Very good. So basically, today, the parties digitizing those documents are connected to Automaxis and enabled to exchange those certificates of origin, packing list, and invoices. How do you see your next step into your digitization survey? What is your ambition to do more on your platform?
Since a cross-border trade carries a very important document called bill of lading, we want to get the P&I license as early as possible, which is a roadmap for a coming year 2022. So we aim at getting the P&I license and also digitize the title documents such as bill of lading.
Okay, so basically, in addition to relying on national laws, Indian laws for electronic signature to sign your certificates of origin, packing lists, and invoices, you want to rely on the P&I club endorsement or approval to offer the bills of lading, indeed, because all of those platforms require that level of recognition endorsement by the P&I club. So that's on your plan. Now, building on the MLETR trend in the market, whereby indeed the ambition of the market, whether it's G7, MLETR, or the Dni Initiative, we want to make sure that documents are interoperable, so that a particular document still has a life cycle that can be extended beyond the platform it has been created on. A bit like a piece of paper. I buy a piece of paper, I write on it, I give it to you, and the piece of paper does not rely on me as the initial producer or user or creator of the document. So how do you see Automaxis also leveraging the MLETR trend in the market?
Definitely, post-COVID, the things have changed with respect to the digital adoption. And what the MLETR talks about is the transferable documents where the ownership transfer happens. And there can also be the audit trails that can be done on top of this document. So MLETR is something that would definitely help us in the business that we are. And interoperability is something that defines the success of a blockchain. So we do not want to be confined to have a consortium that will restrict to a certain thing, but we are very much open so as to provide a value to the end consumers.
Okay, so basically with MLETR, you could have a bill of lading that is starting its life on Automaxis and continues its life outside of Automaxis. would you want to work with banks more to
Yes.
Organize some financial flows?
Yes, Andre. So our end goal is, since we are building a platform, our end goal is to enable the trade finance through our platform. And since we are providing a solution to the importers and the exporters, we want to get the trade finance also done through our platform.
Okay. Because we see in the UK that HMRC, which is part of which is a tax collector in the UK, as you know, and basically part of the Dni Initiative, they want to indeed digitize customs guarantees. So these are payments for customs guarantees on the back of MLETR. And the model we have developed with Enigio, and basically the beauty of an MLETR, an electronic promissory note, for instance, is that it represents a payment commitment, but you don't need to basically intermediate the financial flow. It's just a payment commitment which is accepted at the level of a cash payment, but actually you don't have to basically be handle money in order to deliver that payment commitment. So it's a substitute basically for payment with the same level of assurance for the beneficiary of the payment. So basically this is a good model to show how a particular digitization journey can occur. And we have seen a lot of basically platforms that are digitizing indeed bills of lading on the back of the P&I club license, but they are not interoperable. So with your plan, I think Automaxis has the opportunity to become the first MLETR compliant trade documentation platform to align with the MLETR, the G7 objective, the ICC DSI as well, which has endorsed the Dni Initiative in their interoperability vision. We'll definitely come back on this in a minute, but before that, I'd like to add, Bill, how basically XinFin is supporting this process. We need to unmute you.
Okay, I'll try that again. Thanks, Andre. It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, well, the XDC network, which is the blockchain network that was created by XinFin FinTech, is a hybrid blockchain. There's both private and public state. And so what we're really a part of here is a technology stack, that with Automaxis that allows really, as Andre, you had talked about, the ability to really show, ownership of those documents, once they're digitized. And I think that that's really the most critical piece, in that particular, or how it relates to MLETR or being MLETR compliant that, we have to offer as far as the blockchain. Because with our, essentially what we do is we're tokenizing assets on the blockchain. And so with that tokenization, we're able to show clear ownership. We're able to have all the documentation as part of that trade itself. And that can be any and all documents within the process.
Thank you. So as we see here, indeed, as Automaxis digitizes documents within the platform, those the validity of those documents can be tracked on the public DLT of XinFin through the XDC network. But as Automaxis moves to become a compliant e-bill of lading platform, the same can occur. But we are still in a world where the business data resides in the Automaxis platform, but tracked on the XinFin network for additional documents. And with the Dni Initiative and the MLETR, the compatibility with MLETR laws, whether they are from ADGM, Singapore, UK, France, and so on, we getting to a point where the XDC network is tracking assets, documents, or instruments that are interoperable. So they do not rely on Automaxis anymore. They may rely on Automaxis for the creation, the production, but the life cycle can occur, can pursue outside of the platform. And I must say, a lot of the large bill of lading, it's a bit specific information here, but the large issue we have with the top e-bill of lading platform is that they are resisting this interoperability game objective because they want the industry to be forced to join their platform. So the large bill of lading platform do not necessarily embrace this interoperability opportunity because they are today dominant in the very small market of digital bills of lading, but we see a resistance from them to open up. And I think with new entrants in this market, with Automaxis, there is an opportunity to differentiate, to show how this can be achieved in the right way as the MLETR laws expected to be done. And that's really interoperability. That means the digital asset, whether it's representing a certificate of origin, a packing list, an invoice, or a bill of lading, or a bill of exchange, can continue their life cycle irrespective of the platform they were created on, basically. So that's definitely a very interesting plan from the Automaxis side. If we go a bit deeper in the technology, basically perspective, we see that if we combine those interoperable documents using the Enigio technology and using existing systems like Finastra, China Systems, SureComp, and Swift or e-banking as channel, we see how basically how all of those technologies can be combined. That means Automaxis or any other platform, trade documentation platform, digitizing the documents between the corporates, and then those documents becoming interoperable through the Enigio Trace original technology with various financial institutions. And those financial institutions can themselves exchange those documents through FileAct, which is a file transfer service between banks and large corporates, basically. So it shows that each player has a particular role to play. And here we see also how the XDC network provides a public, basically, register of the tokenized assets. I mean, that means there is no business information being published publicly, but there is only a token being a hash, basically, outcome, a result of the asset being published on for validity and lifecycle tracking. So you basically can check the lifecycle tracking of any asset that you are, for instance, insuring or funding on a continuous basis through the XDC without public blockchain, without being necessarily a client of a particular platform. Pratik, is this the vision you're aiming for?
Yeah, Andre, absolutely. So as rightly said by you, that we will be at the layer where the documents are being generated, but we want a network where what happens post the document are going outside and the network that it is being utilized.
Okay, this is really what the industry is expecting, and as we talk to the large bill of lading platforms, often this is where they resist. So there is an opportunity for you to really stand out here and making demonstrating how it can be achieved in a really interoperable way. Billy, is this also how you see the role of XDC here to track across platforms and financial institutions and all other stakeholders?
Yeah, I really kind of see what we do in a way. I mean, interoperability is really a mandate for us and what we're doing. You know, it's one of the things that we believe is really critical, that we have an open technology or ecosystem that's being created, and with that we're looking to be interoperable with as many different organizations, enterprises, industry initiatives, and other blockchains and technologies as well. So it's really critical, I think, in blockchain. And it's one of the great things about it is that you really can work with other blockchains in ways that create a real mutual benefit for each blockchain and the communities that they're really trying to serve. And in our case, we really look at what we're doing as being part of a larger ecosystem, and it's an open ecosystem. So we want to be able to bring anybody in who wants to be a part of it. I think, as Andre, as you mentioned, the great or benefit that we have as being both public and private is that with our smart contract tokenization platform, which is the technology that runs on top of the blockchain, that will really show, tokenize the assets and show the ownership of it. This is done privately, and so that sensitive data and information are always going to be remain private, within that enterprise or the groups that are operating within it. And then, as you said, the transaction hash and details that the crumbs of the transactions and some of the public details that are there are relayed from the private side, and that way you have immutability and you have the ability to really show publicly where ownership of that actual token is. And so I think with that and our focus on with the tokenization and our focus on working with as many organizations of blockchains, enterprises as we can, it's really the only way in which you're ever going to be able to accomplish what you're trying to do with MLETR, and we think it's really critical. So we're really committed to that, and I think that's one of the great things about what we're doing here is really figuring out that path and how to get there, and continuing to bring more people, enterprises into the ecosystem.
Thank you, Billy. Yeah, I think this view here shows that existing technologies like the back office systems, which I have not put on the chart to keep it simple, but existing channels like SWIFT as well, which is still the most secure global messaging on the planet, connecting banks unparalleled at this stage. Those existing technologies have a role to play, but you need additional technologies like Automaxis to digitize trade documents, and then later also some trade finance instruments like promissory notes or and bill of lading, which is more a logistics document, and the MLETR basically is where the Enigio technology makes a difference because it digitizes the asset. It digitizes the asset so that the asset, whether it's a warehouse receipt, bill of exchange, or a bill of lading, can actually live across corporate financial institutions, because in many cases, financial institutions also exchange those financial instruments, those payment obligations between each other. And again, so the secure transport of File Act combined with the digitization of the asset, the document, such as what Enigio provides, is a perfect combination. And those documents, in some cases, indeed, can be created on the corporate-to-corporate platform like Automaxis. In some cases, like bill of exchange, they could be created on corporate-to-bank platforms like Metigram, for instance, or they could be created on the e-banking portal through Finastra or China Systems or SureComp. There are many vendors in that space. So I think everyone has a role to play. There is no need to replace what is working, but there is a need to add additional capabilities. And public blockchain here, as supported by XDC here, makes a big difference, because you can publish information to anyone, but that piece of information is actually not revealing any confidential information. That piece of information is critical for checking the validity and the stage of life cycle of a particular document or payment instrument, and that is the interoperability layer, basically across platforms, across corporates and financial institutions. So I think that's our vision for as part of the Dni Initiative to support the MLETR market trend, and we are welcoming therefore any of those players. XDC Network is already a member, Automaxis is a member, Enigio is a member, but we are definitely welcoming working with more financial institutions and corporates. There is a big momentum in the UK as the MLETR alignment will occur next year, and the Bill of Exchange Act will offer a digital option for electronic transferable records. So many corporates and banks are getting ready on that track to benefit from the new legal option, and that's why we really are at a stage where we welcome working with more corporates and banks as well as their service providers. So that's our vision for the DNI initiative in support of the G7 ambition that I started to introduce 30 minutes ago. So do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat. We're going to now switch to a second initiative that is as important. It is not related to a legal change in the market, but is this still related to some regulatory trends that we have witnessed over the last decade, actually, following the financial crisis. You know, Basel III has put more pressure on banks' balance sheets, trade banks' balance sheet, and more originators have had the ambition to work on the basis of an originate and distribute model in contrast with the originate and hold model that they have been used to work on. So basically, the TFD initiative has become, as we started this 3 years ago, the largest business community of originators and funders of various types and their service providers to automate trade distribution, basically, and getting more liquidity into the trade originators, liquidity from institutional investors, and potentially also the retail market. So the technology stack we have developed as part of the TFD initiative is composed of Tradeteq and also XDC. We're going to see a bit how that works. And the goal is to deliver the most complete set of capabilities for trade distribution, not just bank to bank, as some platforms are doing, because bank to bank is not the solution to bringing more liquidity into trade finance originators. Is definitely about repackaging into notes, into tokens, and bringing new pools of liquidity into the trade finance business. So definitely the goal is to work on the basis of players in the market. You know, you have trade banks, that's the bulk of the market, but you also have factoring companies, non-bank originators starting like SME financing platforms and ECAs that are critical in on the origination side. And on the investor side, also trade banks working on in the bank-to-bank distribution space, but also credit insurers, asset managers, and institutional investors, those that have the liquidity, but do not, but are looking for additional investment classes to tap into. And we could also consider corporate treasurers over time as they want to invest in some supply chains. They know better, basically. So the TFD initiative is looking for indeed delivering on the basis of the technology stack powered by Tradeteq and XinFin, a complete set of capabilities for syndication, credit insurance, as well as repackaging into notes and tokens, as I said. And the repackaging is quite a major focus because it helps build a bridge between the trade finance industry and the capital markets industry. And that is needed because trade finance speaks about trade instruments, repackaging talks about fixed income securities, and you need some specific bridges like a special purpose vehicle, an SPV structure, to make this work and to transform those portfolios of assets into notes, for instance. So that has been basically the focus. And over the 3 years, we have attracted indeed a number of trade originators, institutional investors, technology stack providers. The main ones today are indeed TradeTeq and XDC, but there are other ones that we aim to work with as the market grows. We have service providers, mainly law firms and implementation companies. And we're working, of course, with various associations such as ITFA, ICC, and ICSA. So basically here also, XDC has been working to bring the power of blockchain into this ecosystem. And I would like to ask Bill to tell us more about the role of XDC in this particular market.
Yeah, well, as far as you had mentioned, Andre, the technology stack, I think we're a very important component to that. And really the benefit of what we're really doing is speeding, the ability to speed up the process with a high level of integrity in a system where trust is really built on all of the players who are involved within the network itself. And so it really allows us to take the technology of blockchain and go through the process or support the process, I'd say, of taking all of the non-bank originators, the individual, the SMEs that are really looking for the funding and the investors coming in, and really create a very seamless process that allows the execution of this trade or transaction and the tokenization to happen nearly instantaneously with a high degree of confidence within the transaction. And I think that in that case, it eliminates a lot of time and money or effort that it takes to do a lot of this work manually. And the process itself is the tokenization platform that we have is really an evolution of where we've come from. So we're starting with what's happening off chain and bringing all of the players together and developing the ecosystem in a way that it's becoming more and more digitized or seamless in that process. And I think what it enables us to do is really speed up these transactions in volume and size and serve a much greater part of the market across the globe. And that's really the key. Like when we're looking at an ecosystem, is how can we support that and ensure that these transactions are happening in a way that they're meeting the needs of all of the participants within the ecosystem.
Can you tell us about one originator you have been working with?
Yeah, we've worked with Accelerated Payments, has been involved with so we had actually completed the first transaction of packaging invoices together and factored them in a note with Accelerated Payments on the network, working with TradeTeq. And what this really enabled us to do is turn this into a NFT and finance this transaction. The beauty of it is that it really has helped the businesses in a way that they need in order to get the financing. And we're taking or working with Accelerated Payments to kind of take this more traditional and more cumbersome process, and we were able to run it and complete it on the smart contract platform with really all of the standards and information needed in order to execute the trade, whether it's redemption time or any other factor that may come up within the process. These are all written into the smart contract in a way that really makes it a very complete process. And we've also not just done the first trade, which was back in September, and that was the first of its kind done on blockchain. But we've also continued to do that and accelerated the process of doing more transactions, and so it's a really a win-win for everybody that's involved in this, from the SMEs to accelerated payments, TradeTeq, all of the participants, and the network itself, really showing how blockchain could make a difference in adopting a more seamless process.
So basically, with tokenization, I think it's fair to say, but correct me if I'm wrong, Billy. It's fair to say that with the tokenization process, we remove even more frictions from the process. We further reduce the cost. We accelerate the whole process. So, in comparison to repackaging into notes, tokenization is quite achieves a similar objective to transform a portfolio of receivables, payables into something that the liquidity providers expect. So repackaging into notes, tokenization into tokens, but the further reduction of costs through the tokenization is a win-win for both the seller of the assets and the buyer thanks to indeed the enhanced yield they can deliver following, of course, the cost reduction. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I think that when we were talking about this as accelerated payments, I believe they're the average note that they run is about 42 days, and when you start to think about doing a short-term note for businesses and the amount of turns that is in a year with the volume of transactions that they're doing, it's a tremendous amount of detail, and all of that detail can now really be brought onto the blockchain and executed very quickly with a high level of integrity in the information. And so, yeah, I think it removes a tremendous amount of friction. It's a really a great way to reduce the costs out of the system. And I think anything that goes from being so manual to being such a streamlined digital process eliminates a tremendous amount of questions around what kind of errors can be created within the manual system. And so the integrity of it is incredibly high in that particular case.
Okay, so this is fascinating because it's not only, we talked about the efficiency that blockchain brings. And I must admit, it took me 3-4 years before being convinced about, because I'm coming from the highly centralized world, SWIFT, highly centralized governance, technology, everything is centralized in the traditional space. And now with blockchain, everything seems to be decentralized. But basically the technology digitizes indeed with the smart contract, digitizes and automates some settlement processes as well, because the payment conditions are digitized. So we reduce cost, we improve overall efficiency, but with what you have done, XDC network with TradeTeq, you basically are bridging the trade finance asset class, the $19 trillion USD trade business, with not only the institutional market that wants to use tokens, but also the retail market. Because the whole ambition of banks over the last decade has been, how can we tap into institutional liquidity? And notes have been an answer to that. But with the tokenization option, suddenly we deliver much more than what banks expected, because they will be able, through indeed the combined technology stack of TradeTeq and XDC, to tap into retail sources of liquidity. And we know retail is on blockchain and DeFi a growing community and a growing pool of liquidity. So is that a fair statement also, that retail clients will be able to tap into the trade asset class?
Yeah, I think that, you actually really hit it on the nail on the head in a lot of aspects. And I think that, first and foremost, that, there are retail investors who are looking for alternative investments where, as you had talked about, decentralized finance is a huge component of what has driven adoption of blockchain, just really across the industry. And this particular tokenization platform and what we've really created here together is an opportunity for really kind of a trade fi where, we're looking at taking some of the most solid assets really that you could invest in, the most stable assets that you could invest in, and having retail investors becoming a part of that or a participant within, that actual, the investment. And so I think that it's really a tremendous opportunity, and mostly because, as we know, it's, banks are, obviously very risk averse, and, what they're, looking at doing. And I think that rightly so, institutions that are looking at new technologies, and a lot of fintechs are looking at, well, how can we bridge, the need for the financing and, the risk aversion, with people who can, come in and help create that liquidity that we need, and bridge it in a way so that everybody then can see how really how the system is incredibly resilient. It's very it's transparent. It's everything that happens, and that there's a term, in blockchain we talk about things being trustless, which really just means that you're not putting trust into one central party. It really should really be that it's trustful. Really, that a network itself allows for really participants to feel that there's an incredible amount of trust in the system and the network, because they're actually also part of it. Everybody has to be a part of it, and so it's really an incredible opportunity, I think, for a lot of people, and retail is definitely, from what we're seeing, a driving force and helping bring that additional liquidity to the market.
Yeah. So more liquidity coming from the retail space. That's quite fascinating, because that's not what the banks expected. But I'm sure some banks and non-bank originators will be glad to tap into those additional sources of liquidity. More transparency, as you say, because of the full traceability. We could have a bill of lading, a bill of exchange created on Automaxis or another platform, and basically from the primary space being tokenized on where it is tracked on XinFin, being also tokenized on through TradeTech and XDC for bringing liquidity, and the XDC network could cut across the two spaces. I'm just looking at the questions we got here. There is one for Pratik, but before getting there, just want to answer live. One of the questions are we seeing digitization in the capital market space? Yes, from what I see on the regulatory side, Germany, for instance, the UK as well, this blockchain technology, the digital assets, where there is no tangible asset that you can hold in your hands like a piece of paper, where you have intangible assets on the blockchain. All these technology capabilities are being integrated into law. And capital markets, as you know, is very cost conscious, highly automated, digitized, but they can do much better still. And capital markets is definitely where we see a blockchain being used as well. Our focus with the TFD initiative is definitely to bridge trade with capital markets, but we know blockchain is also used across a number of investment classes. So that's for that particular question. We have a question for Pratik here from Ketan. Have you done any use case with banks, or what are your plans in terms of working with banks, your really short-term priorities, Pratik?
Yeah. So Ketan, to answer this, we have recently started for the shipping bill realization with ICICI Bank. The talks have recently started. We are yet to get the API. So what will happen is the shipping bill that is being generated either by a CHA or the exporter we will be making that data available to the ICICI Bank system. So the exporter, the use case is that the exporter, rather than logging into ICICI Bank portal, he can carry out the shipping bill initiation or shipping bill realization process right from our platform.
Okay, that's very good. And
we are looking to get the same thing done with other banks as well.
Yep, very good. So that's to answer Ketan's question. Thank you, Ketan, for your question. We have another question here. With complete digitization, can we assume that the possibility of fraud will be totally eliminated? Yeah, I think that relates to what Billy just said as well in terms of transparency, granularity. Anything that is being done is being done at the level of the detailed transaction. There is no information that is lost in translation during the process, because you always see, thanks to blockchain as well, the full traceability to the asset you are insuring or the asset you are processing as an originator or funding in the secondary space, for instance. So indeed, there are still additional use cases that need to be worked on, but I think the traceability of assets through those technologies, the fact that the whole digitization is done at transaction level and not just at aggregated level, is a way to fight some frauds, not all frauds. There is still one use case, fraud use case, that we have to think about, is that is even more complex to fight, is the double financing, double spending. But there are dedicated platforms like Monetago, which is part of the Dni Initiative as well, which are focusing exclusively on that. But the digitization we are working on, Automaxis, XinFin network, and many other platforms, is certainly a critical input for the Monetago of this world, and there are others to deliver their value proposition in terms of fighting double spending. Billy, Pratik, anything to add on fraud and traceability?
Well, I think from our perspective, one of the things that's really interesting about the development of the XDC network is that it was really actually born out of an initiative by Monetago in India, by one of our founders, Atul Kikade. And that was one of the, and I think actually the first blockchain integration in banking at the time. And it was a very, very significant fraud prevention system that was put in place. And with banks in India. And that's really what was the springboard for what ultimately became the XDC network. And the idea behind looking at what type of blockchain can be created that would really meet the requirements of what enterprises are looking for, the ability to be private and public, which is part of that. But fraud prevention was really at the core of that. And we talk about the benefits of really private and public is risk mitigation. So you can have those limited set of data really being relayed to the public network, and that in itself making it public. And the immutability of it is that, as a consensus mechanism for a network, you have multiple nodes that are validating these transactions when they happen. And so I think that, yeah, you can't double spend, which is obviously a big concern when it comes to fraud, and all the traceability is there. So I think that these areas will only become more advanced as more services are built on top of blockchain to help in mitigating any of those the challenges that you have in fraud.
Yep. Very good. Thank you, Billy. I'm checking the questions here. We have two in the chat. Multiple platforms developed on digitization of trade finance and SME finance. To make these standardized, widespread, and more useful, do you think interoperability amongst the platforms is required, and how the same is being worked out? So, yeah, I think the beauty of what we see in trade finance digitization, and one of the charts with the Swift logo showed it or illustrates it, I will go back to it, is that multiple players are involved in trade digitization, and they are all highly specialized. They are not trying to do everything by themselves. So everyone is highly specialized. And when you have a physical supply chain, a documentary supply chain, and a financial supply chain that is going to be based on multiple platforms, then those platforms have to be interoperable. So interoperability is needed across the life cycle of the transaction. You don't necessarily need interoperability across all possible platforms. That might not be needed, because interoperability is in any way achieved through the bank-to-bank space, where banks intermediate transactions and interoperate at their level. So definitely, yes, interoperability of those electronic transferable records now is the next challenge. It was not achievable over the last 2 decades, despite many investments in trade digitization platforms, because the laws need to change. The laws are going to change now, thanks to G7 firepower and role models like Singapore, Bahrain, ADGM, and soon the UK. So the train has left the station, but that doesn't require all platforms to be interoperable amongst themselves. It really depends on who is next in the chain of the transaction. So that's one of the questions. And another question is, in order to ensure that all countries are participating in this digital transformation in trade, do you see any positive support from their government, and how to ensure all countries are at the same page? Yes, I think that's the G7 indeed push that is not new. It started earlier this year. ICC UK already did great work through the G7 to influence the other countries, but it has to start at the top of the pyramid. It cannot, we can't, on the technology side, we can't influence policymakers. It really has to come from an authority like the G7 and a common ambition. So I think what we see today, certainly through the ICC network and some countries, again the UK in particular, through the ICC UK team, is really the way forward. But indeed, any more talks we can have on the Indian side with the policymakers is definitely going to help, because I'm sure India wants to have its place there as well on the leading countries embracing MLETR. Finally, another question, Prateek. When we are talking about digital documents, I understand it covers both digital doc transfer and the transfer of data elements. Is that correct, Prateek?
Yeah, I mean, can you please elaborate, Vidya? What do you mean by data elements exactly?
The information details.
Yeah, we are doing that, but Andre, I guess you can shed more light when we will be using the Enigio's network.
Prateek and Andre, I think this is time that I would supplement, because the questions you are getting is a very senior official in trade from State Bank of India. The unique thing about this group is when you are answering that you are, like collaborating with ICICI Bank, a few senior officials of ICICI Bank are actually sitting in the audience. So if you want to pass on any message to these guys, in fact, it's a great opportunity to tell them. No, I'm just kidding. But what I'm trying to tell you is this last question has come from a senior officials of State Bank of India. And Andre, while you have made yourself very clear that you are not competing with banks, I understand, I mean, pardon my limitation, that you are not running parallel to the Digital Standard Initiative of International Chamber of Commerce. In fact, you are working in tandem. You are in regular contact with the Digital Standard Initiative, what Oswald Queller has been doing and the new steering committee has been doing. Andre, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly right, indeed. And on this slide in particular for the Dni Initiative, we are completely aligned with the ICC DSI program. The ICC DSI program led by Oswald is much wider in scope. The Dni Initiative, we work from a bottom-up perspective. We take digital technologies, we assemble them, we demonstrate how you can achieve the MLETR ambition. So we are one of the pillars, I would say, of the ICC DSI, which is why we were endorsed by ICC DSI back in June of this year. So it's a full alignment, I must say. It's probably the time where we have never seen so much alignment between various market associations, ICC, ITFA, and others on the institutional side. And I'm in frequent contact with Oswald on this point, because we want to get to a point where now we're working with banks, with corporates, with technology providers, and we already have the technology providers. And that's why I invited today Automaxis, because we have an Indian focus here. And but there are other technology providers like Finastra, China Systems, Metagram, that are committed to be part of the next phase, which is around delivering proof of concept with banks, in support of banks and the corporate clients. So there is full alignment, I must say. What I want to highlight is that the large electronic bill of lading platforms, and they will not like me to say this, but I'm an independent consultant, so I can say what I think I should, are resisting the interoperability objective, because they want to force the banks on their platform, which is why I believe more in new entrants like Automaxis and more recent entrants in the e-bill of lading space, because they are more open. They want to differentiate. I want to see the day that we have a Bolero SDocs embracing Enigio and MLETR to become interoperable with other platforms and DFIs. But I'm sure that time will come, but it's not in the next few months. So we're getting to the end of this session, and we welcome more questions. I see more questions coming in. This is a chart that summarizes basically the two initiatives. Really, the Dni initiative is very much focused on origination, digitizing the corporate to bank, but also some of the corporate to corporate instruments, and the trade finance distribution initiative getting into the investor space. And with XDC network being the hybrid blockchain to track and provide this level of transparency across any particular technologies, FIs, and other stakeholders. We have another question for Pratik here. Secured logistic document exchange is another system rolled out by the India customs to minimize use of paper documents. What is your position towards that system?
Yeah, so Andre, as I said, we are always open even to integrate to the consortiums or the networks that are made by a government or any semi-government agency. So I guess you're talking about the national logistics policy, if I'm not wrong, or if this might be something different from that. But we are, since we are based out of Hyderabad, so it was a seafood exports digitization that we started our journey with. So we have MPIDA and similar organizations which are involved in the export documentations, where they will be getting or integrating themselves with the national logistics policy, which talks about making the government portals interoperable. So as the national e-governance policies of open APIs clearly mentions about the government portals being opened with the APIs, which can be consumed or utilized by the third party like us. So I guess this will also fall under the same thing if it's a government's initiative. And we, as I said, we are always open to integrate to the existing networks that are existing.
Yep, and to interoperate also with those indeed. Thank you, Pratik. I see no other question at this point in time, but we have a few minutes to go, as I think Pinaki wants to close in a few minutes. So again, the call to action is We need to continue talking at the level of the Indian market to the policymakers, making them aware about the G7 push. This presentation includes the links to the official pieces of news around that. If you want to refer to the full text of MLETR, G7 announcement, and so on the Dni Initiative. We have two communities on the Dni Initiative and TFD Initiative to welcoming you to run proof of concepts. There is no cost to join those initiatives. And you can work with correspondent banks, with some technology providers. We have a sandbox as well, a free of charge sandbox on the Dni Initiative to try out the Enigio technology, again, for free, no contract to sign. And this is just to basically help you discover the opportunities. I will definitely, through Pinaki, share the recording of this session as well as the presentation, and continue to share testimonials, because we are progressing with various institutions on both initiatives. The TFD initiative has already 2 dozens of financial institutions live for distribution. The Dni Initiative is already live in the logistics space in Europe for some documents, and we are moving into pilot with the HMRC for customs guarantees. Nokia also wants to digitize guarantees. So there are opportunities for you to learn from peers through those initiatives. And that's what I have to offer through those sessions, in addition to the expertise from Pratik and Billy, an invitation to consider joining those initiatives. They are with the association, but there is no need being an ITFA member in order to benefit from those initiatives. So that's an open invitation for your community, Pinaki. And if there are no other questions, I would like at this stage to thank Billy and Pratik for getting up very early, Billy, on the east side of the US, and for joining us from India, Pratik. Thank you very much for joining us.
I begin with thanking you, Andre, but this time I begin with thanking Willy profusely for getting up so early in the morning for, largely the audience in India. It was pretty early. Thanks, Pratik, for being here. And clarification I would like to provide to Billy and Pratik in particular. Andre knows about it. Ours is an informal group, but we have representation from banks, corporates, quasi-regulatory bodies. And, in case, and we do it for the community and we do it pro bono. It's absolutely altruistic way, I'm sure Andre will vouch for. So anybody requires any, facilitation, please feel free to contact us through Andre, or you can mail us. It will be most welcome. A fascinating session as always. Thanks, Andre, for, despite your very busy and tight schedule, agreeing to address us as always. And let me tell you, this is the 8th webinar. The first webinar was addressed to you, and it is only in the fitness of things. Then the last webinar of this, year is also addressed by you and your colleagues. Thank you so much, Andre. Thanks, Billy. Thank you, Pratik, and happy holidays. Have a wonderful Christmas and a very good New Year. Thank you, everybody, all the participants. Thanks from TFW Group. Take care, sir.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Pinaki.
Bye. Bye.
Billy, bye-bye.